Auzubillahiminash-shaytanir-rajeem. Bismillahir-rahmanir-rahim. Assalamualaikum. Ji ayanu pakhair agle ni hao chunashume washmale. Ohio Gonzaimas, Guten Morgen, hola, bonjour, privyet, kaifa hal? Hale shuma chatore, ahlan wa sahlan marhaba. Abuna mucho gracias, swabi ab balli kare aaya. Hoş geldin and sayo khuyamora chi batto chi hal jot kali mera khairutan. And a very warm welcome to everybody who's tuned into PTV Ball and watching World this morning. Alongside my very well learned colleague who happens to be Miss Hajra Satti. I happen to be Shehzad Hasan Khan, and we hope and pray that everybody out there is doing wonderfully well and that you're ready to kickstart your day with us. Ramazan Mubarak. But first things first. Hello Hajra, assalamu alaikum. How are you doing on a fine sunny Thursday morning over here in Islamabad?
Walaikum assalam. Thank you so much. Yesterday we received, I think, a very unexpected rainfall. It was not predicted in the Met Office, but I think this is the beauty of the changing seasonalities of the nature. And now I would like to focus your attention on a very interesting event that we are observing. That is the International Nowruz Day. Yeah. It is celebrated in a number of countries worldwide, and that means in Persia. It is rooted in the ancient Persian tradition dating back to 3,000 years. It marks the advent of the spring and is a festive occasion in several countries in Western Asia, Central Asia, Caucasus, Black Sea Basin, Balkans and South Asia. In Iran, it is the day of the new year in the solar Hijri calendar. The United Nations has officially recognized International Day of Nowruz in February 2010.
Exactly, and not just that, Nowruz actually kickstart when the sun actually moves from this part of the equator to the other part of the equator. It's the advent of spring, and it obviously brings a lot of happiness. And where we are to speak about happiness, it's, today actually happens to be the International Day of Happiness. So be happy, people. The National Day of Happiness is being observed today to recognize the importance of happiness in people's lives. On July 12, 2012, the United Nations General Assembly proclaimed March 20th as the International Day of Happiness, recognizing the relevance of happiness and well-being as universal goals and aspirations in the lives of human beings.
Wow. Wonderful. And I think,
happy, people.
Yeah, true. And I don't feel that, you need a particular day to feel happy, but anyways, it is the significance of being happy, and that is, we're also observing World Oral Health Day to raise the awareness of the importance of oral hygiene, which is essential for the overall well-being of the people. The day aims to motivate people to take care of their hygiene, which is often overlooked. Dentists and hygienists educate people on the importance of maintaining good oral hygiene, which in turn ensures good general health.
Exactly.
And speaking about the health, I think it is a high time that we develop the conversations, and I think they're already being held about the hygiene, about the health of the environment. And in particular Islamabad, because we grew up in Islamabad, we have plenty of memories, plenty of good experiences, childhood experiences, growing up in a very green Islamabad. So in order to unfold the conversation regarding the beauty of the Islamabad, regarding the tree plantation campaign in Islamabad, and make sure that we protect this greenery of Islamabad, we are very glad that we have been joined by one of the very important personality who has graced us. She happens to be DG Environment of the CDA. She is Miss NAZIA ABRAR Khan. Assalamu alaikum, and thank you so much for coming to our show.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Wonderful
Thank you.
to have you over, and I do believe for a fact that I think that this is one of its kind that this conversation will be taking place over here. So the reason that we have you over here, first of all, thank you so much. It's an honor to have you. And to speak about Islamabad is something, when you grew up in a place, you are almost and every day in love with it. So, there was this meeting which was held, the chairman, CDA, and the Sahab actually said that, the paper mulberry, 10,000 trees of paper mulberry will be cut down and 80,000 indigenous plants will be planted in Islamabad in days to come. So let's unfold this conversation first and then we'll move ahead.
Thank you very much. This paper mulberry thing is, it's invasive, it's not indigenous in Islamabad. So anything when you play with the nature, definitely nature has its own course of retaliation. So it happened once that when this was the invasive species, but it was somehow brought into Islamabad, but it played havoc with life and health of the people, and the pollen allergy. It raises the quantum of pollen in air, and it becomes sometimes difficult and even difficult to breathe.
Absolutely.
To breathe in air. So for that, Prime Minister Office in fact took this initiative, and they directed CDA to chart out, to carve out a plan to eradicate this invasive species and replenish with the indigenous and native species plants. So for that, Chairman Saab directed us, and we charted out a plan, and we took the stock of the mulberry trees.
How many trees do we have in Islamabad, mulberry, paper mulberry trees?
There are different, for instance, criteria. We take the girth. If the girth is more than 4 inches, then we take it as a grown-up tree. If it is less than that, then obviously we have plenty of, maybe in lakhs, those mulberry trees.
Right.
So we took stock of that, and these are around 25,000 total trees, and
Right.
spread around, spread almost in all over the Islamabad, and mostly in F9 Park, Shakarpadiya Park, and along the Nallas, and there are areas along F10, F11, and also along the H sectors, I sectors. So once mapping was done, then we chart out a plan, we auctioned these sites, and the process, we are following the process, and we have yet not completely eliminated all of them. We are in the process of that. For the time being, we have removed all the almost 90% of them from the F9 park, and we were obviously having this concern again that a paper mulberry tree has a broad leaf. So it gives a green, cover. And once these will be removed, obviously the civil society would also may feel that where have that all green cover went. So, but this was obviously what we were bound to do. And in order to, replenish with the more indigenous trees, we have, prepared a parallel plan and started planting those indigenous trees along once those were extracted along with the roots.
Right. Ms. Nazia, I want you to develop the conversation on the indigenous trees. Now, back in, I think, 60s when the capital was shifted to Islamabad, a lot of eucalyptus were planted here, which is called Safeda in Urdu, right? And that is not an indigenous tree at all. But one of the good things about eucalyptus is that, it really grows quickly. And because of that, we see the water tables are really, depleting, right? Because it consumes a lot of water, right, in Islamabad. And so the, the foresight was not present in that time, when you're planting that very invasive species that you want. So when we talk about the indigenous species, right, I believe that shisham is very native to this land. So which indigenous species are you planting, and how are you going to undertake this campaign? Are you involving the local communities? Because if you do not involve the local communities in that, they're not going to own that tree plantation drive, right? And we've seen that nowadays in the afforestation paradigm, local communities' participation is essential in their protection.
You're right, actually I agree with you, and this time the chairman's vision is very clear. Chairman CDA has directed us to plant only flowering or shady tree or fruit tree. So only 3 species we are planting, and we have developed a complete holistic list of those species. And even for the ornamental purposes, we are going only for the indigenous and native trees. And I must say, for instance, Kachnar, you say it's also a flowering and fruit tree as well. People use it for the cooking as well, and it's very healthy and high in nutritional value.
Locust, guava, fig, apricot, people, native mulberry, and other types of plants which need to be planted.
Amalthas, Kachnar, this Jacaranda, fiddlewood. Fiddlewood, you see all along this pear and many others. And if you see this shisham and fiddlewood, it's not. There are certain species which are semi-deciduous. So when they shed their leaves, so they turn into yellow, orange, and it gives extremely beautiful, shades. And we see.
And that's exactly what we want as well. But over here, I'm very sorry that I'm bringing this up, and it needs to be a part of our conversation. But unfortunately, as Pakistanis, most of the time our sentiments are actually not really pro-government, but most of the time people like, okay, CD has taken this initiative, we don't know whether if it's going to happen or not. Now imagine if Capital Development Authority is saying that 10,000 paper mulberry trees will be cut down, and the sites have been auctioned, and this will go to people whoever actually have been participating within the auction. And then 80,000 of these trees, the list that we mentioned, will be planted. Now how much time will it take for us to kind of observe कि हाँ यार वो दरख्त लगे भी हैं? I think that's one thing that we would want to know as people who live in Islamabad or as Pakistanis.
Yes. So I think there are different streams of action plan. One is exactly replenishing the plants on the cutted sites. Other is a journal plantation campaign all across the Islamabad. And thirdly is involving all the corporate sectors, and our prime motive and you know, way forward was also to involve community, students and corporate sector in it.
Exactly.
Because when people take ownership, then not only the survival of that species is ensured, but also, you know, there is a lot of ownership of whole campaign as well, and environmental cause as well.
Yeah, and that's one thing, you know, so certainly, I mean, it's not that I've asked my boss or people who actually work at the top of PTV, can we do a partnership where CDA, whenever they are planting, they can have a team from PTV World, you know, who captures whatever plants are being planted, and then we come over here and we show it to our audiences. This is actually happening.
Why not? Why not? We would be delighted to have you in the field, and we are in fact requesting media also to participate and to raise awareness also among the public. And we have planted significant, almost more than 15,000 plants in F9 Park on their place. But you know, a plant is a living being, so it takes obviously time. Even though we are going for the large size trees, at least 8 to 10.
I was about to ask you, thank you so much.
8 to 10 feet, but again, it's a living thing. So it takes at least 1 year or 2 years to, you know, start growing and showing
the fruit.
Yes,
So
showing the
imagine-
leaves.
Right, but I think one of the important aspect is, madam, that I do remember when I was growing in Islamabad, so there were lots of, you know, pine trees, right, which are also native trees of the Murray or, you know, highlands, because of their capacity to regulate the oxygen and keep the temperatures low. But right now I see in Islamabad that they have been, I don't know, either they have burned down or they have been eliminated. I don't see their visible presence anymore, right? And secondly, do you feel that, you know, we also need to protect, you know, that pine tree plantation within the Islamabad? And secondly, there are plenty of housing societies, mushrooming growth across Islamabad, and I think Islamabad is expanding from every direction, from every dimension, right? So many places which are considered to be part of Rawat are now also Islamabad. Or maybe, you know, they're going to touch Abbottabad sooner because the way it is expanding. So, and how do you regulate these housing societies cutting down the trees, because they're planting those, what do you call it, the date trees or the palm trees, which is not an indigenous species at all, right? So they are not providing the shade or maybe the greenery out there. So is CDA doing anything to, I mean, protect that indigenous species?
Yes. As far as the advisory is concerned, that we are definitely doing that. And under the Ministry of Climate Change as well, it is the policy of the government to advocate for the indigenous plants. And now CDA is in the process of formulating that policies, and which would be obviously strictly followed. For all the housing societies, we are going to formulate that policy involving all the indigenous species and compelling them to only go for a plantation of that. Obviously, I truly believe that every inch of development has a huge environmental cost, has a huge environmental. So once you are undergoing the development, you are undertaking the development, obviously that is also, housing is also need of the people. But to balance out with and mitigating the climate change and their environmental damage is imperative for our future, generation. And we in the CDA are very much cognizant of this fact that we need to build up the chunks of oxygen, you know, and we are, this spring plantation, our theme is urban forestation and planting trees for mitigating climate change. This is our tagline for this spring plantation, and we are in the process of developing those urban forests on chunks of kilometers and kilometers wherever we find, and building them and, you know, developing them as an urban forest. So basically they would act as a lung for our future generation, and we are advocating to our civil society that please come forward and join us. And also we have this time involved our students, Ministry of Federal Education and Professional Training as well. They have 2,65,000. So our chairman said that when every child will plant 2 plants, so we are providing them from our nursery only indigenous species, you know.
I mean, we would love to do that too as well. And in addition to this, there are a couple of things, you know, obviously we have spoken about trees, and to be very honest, before, you know, I met you and we had this conversation, I was really dicey whether it's going to happen or not. So thank you so much for this reassurance as well. That's exactly what we need as audiences. Number 2, we're talking about climate, we're talking about shadow, we're talking about ourselves and how we really need to get rid of pollen. but there was an entire ecosystem connected with the paper mulberry trees as well. There might be some sort of birds, they might be home to these paper mulberry trees. Are we considering that, number one? And then we'll come towards the beautification of Islamabad, please.
Yes. This year, in collaboration with WWF and also Environment Protection Cell Islamabad under Ministry of Climate Change, we have planted a bird nest along the 10,000 bird nest along the trees, different trees. So to enable the breeding of those rare species, those endangered species, because you know I haven't ever seen any nest on this eucalyptus and hardly on this paper mulberry thing as well. Whereas you see number of their nest along the this sumbal or this tali, shisham, obviously. So basically this is very important, and I think we need a consistent policy upon this. And even in the ornamental side, we are working for sustainable species. We are moving away from this seasonal flowering and seasonal thing to the perennial. So basically 90-10, we are bringing a 90-10 mix, 90% perennial and 10% this seasonal thing.
Whatever
throughout
the time of season.
Even I can name you these gazania, geranium and euphorbia milli. These are our local hardy flowering, and they remain flowering for whole the year. Wonderful. And we don't need hardly they need water or maintenance for that. And obviously the kind of environment, the kind of water we are going to have in our future, we need to have very, very cognizant steps right at this moment. And for also for the shrubs, even we are going for hibiscus rosa or legistomia or cassia glauca. These are our native species, and they give you flowers not of only 1 inch but obviously a bunch of flowers. Wonderful. So this would increase the beauty in Islamabad, and I have significantly under the command of the chairman CDA planted since the last monsoon. But obviously time will take, and within a year or two you will see a massive flowering shrubs and flowering
and not just that.
saplings.
So I am looking forward to a time where alongside my daughters I'll be stopping by to kind of pluck lucarte or guava or fig of the trees as well. Will that be allowed by CDA?
Obviously. We are extremely encouraging this thing. Planting of fruit trees, and for that we have designated a whole site along in the F9 park. We can show you, and for there we will be planting. We are making a big fruit orchard basically in F9 that would house 10,000 plants. And we have divided them in lucarte, apple, cherry, grapes, and another one was in the list. Yes, maybe no, not guava. It's a fig. Fig. So fig is also very native. It invites all the birds, so many unique birds. So.
And now we will move on to a very interesting news, and which is that we do get anxiety because obviously we are humans and our emotions are affected by that. We will develop this conversation, but once again thank you so much, madam, for being here.
But I have one last question.
I think that we're really short on time. I'm sorry for the interjection here, but we will bid her farewell, and we will move towards a very interesting news, and that is that ChatGPT gets anxiety from the violent users. Yes, a study has revealed that ChatGPT experiences anxiety and stress just like humans when confronted with distressing news and traumatic stories. The research found that disturbing information affects ChatGPT's performance, increasing chances of it responding with bias. However, researchers believe that they would have found ways to calm down the AI mind, and they were of the view that ChatGPT responds to mindfulness-based exercises, which enables it to change the way it interacts with users. After being prompted with soothing imagery and meditation, the study points out the results can be used to inform how AI can be used in mental health intervention. And now, obviously, this is a very interesting another news about how Blue Ghost final messages as it signs off from the moon. After Blue Ghost spacecraft made a clean move landing on its first attempt earlier this month, the Texas-based company Firefly Aerospace announced that its lunar mission was over after the spacecraft sent back its last message before signing off from the moon. An excerpt from the lander's last message is, "Here lies Blue Ghost," a testament to the team who, along with the loving support of their families and friends, built and operated these machines and its payload to push the capabilities and knowledge of humanity one small step further. Blue Ghost had become the final commercial spacecraft to make soft moon landing, and its company even shared the footage of the moment.
Wow. So
Very
it's
interesting.
great for Blue Ghost, and not just that, where we're trying to increase knowledge, ladies and gentlemen, we're trying to actually give maximum exposure to our audiences as well. And in that hope, what we are doing is that since it's Ramadan, all over the globe, within every Muslim country, wherever there's Muslim minority or majority,
Yes.
everybody's observing that. And for us to kind of sit in Pakistan and see whether how people in different regions, in different parts of the world are actually celebrating or observing Ramadan is something which is very enticing for me. So, Hajra, where are we going today?
So we are going to watch the visuals of how Ramadan is spent around the globe, and that too in the Al Jais. Let's go and let's take a look.
Let's do this. All right, ladies and gentlemen, well, that one thing that I could see was that, that they are actually offering burgers and milkshakes in iftar. And I think
Right.
that's quite a hefty meal, for you to kind of have milkshakes and then have a burger is something which is really interesting for me to see. And not just that, I do remember how one of my cousins, if he's out there, I'll probably share it with him. His name is Ali Khalid, and he's serving the Pakistan Army. And whenever he would come over, he'll be like, oh, Papa, koi milkshake bana hua hai. And so, we make the milkshake. And then later on, after having like 2-3 glasses, he'll be like, kuch aur bana hua hai. So that we are like, Ali, please make sure that sirf tera roza nahi, puri duniya ka roza hai.
Right,
So
right.
make sure that you consume it wisely as well. So Ali, thank you so much for that memory.
Right, and speaking about, khana pina and iftari, so we are going towards a very interesting segment, that is Cooking Conundrum. And today we have chosen the recipe from IQBAL, and she is making the chicken wontons, and the recipe is so amazing that I really want to try chicken wontons after this recipe.
Yeah.
So let's go and let's take a look.
Well, I certainly never knew that chicken wontons actually existed, because the only wontons that I've had were the sweet ones as well. But for everybody who's out there, please go ahead, make sure that you try them. And in addition to this, I think what we're going to do over here now today is that, Hajra and me, we always would want to speak about, young people leading the way to a more equitable future. And I think me and Hajra over here are actually an example and epitome for that as well, where how we have always made sure that, that our environment is more inclusive, that we hear voices not just from the men or the women of this society, but rather children as well. And that's exactly a mindset which you really need to instill in your own self to make sure that you kind of will be able to do that. Because from the generation that we are, I mean, my dadi was never speaking in front of my dada, or probably, we were never allowed to speak in front of our dada as well, because he would get so angry, so how to kind of actually make sense and have a future which is more equitable.
Right, and I think we would also want to further expand on the discussion and, talk about the prophetic roots. And if you see how Holy Prophet Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, after he conquered Makkah in a very bloodless revolution, he established a society which was very inclusive. I think inclusivity, diversity and equality are the buzzwords for the modern 20th and 21st century, but we have the examples of it from our prophetic roots. And the society that he laid in the Medina was extremely inclusive of every community. There were diverse groups living within that. There were Jews, there were Christians. Within the Christians, there were so many sects who were living there, and there were other minorities. There were Zoroastrians, there were Muslims, and all were living in a very harmonious sort of the way. So instead of, getting in the flow of these modern notions of inclusivity and diversity, which is a very Western-centric notion, and they had their own ideas of, you know, what inclusivity entails, we can go back to the prophetic tradition, because once a divine revelation guides you towards something, I do believe it is very close to fitra, and we need to follow that notion and how to navigate your Muslim identity living in the 21st century in this digital age where you are exposed to so many foreign, and sometimes I would call it invasive ideologies. So in order to unfold this conversation, we are very glad that we have been joined by one of the very big names on the social media. He is a motivational speaker. He happens to be Professor Dr. JAVED Iqbal. Assalamu alaikum, sir. Ramazan Mubarak to you and welcome to the show.
Walaikum assalam. Mubarak to you as well. Thank you for having me
Jazakallah
here.
khair. Jazakallah khair. So, Dr. Javed, let's unfold this conversation. Like you mentioned, like I mentioned in my intro, and Shehzad also alluded to the same fact that nowadays we do find this equity, inclusivity, diversity are buzzwords, and I think we are always enticed by the idea. But if you dive deeper into this conception of very liberal idea of inclusivity and equality, you will find there are lots of loopholes, gap holes. But our younger minds, especially Muslim minds, they are getting impressed with these ideas. How to navigate your identity and reconnect back to your prophetic traditions?
Yeah, thank you very much. The first thing is that it reminds me of a saying of Hazrat Ali Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu, which said that don't train your children the way you were trained, because they were not born for your time. They are born for their time. So one very important thing is that as outer circumstances changes, as a human consciousness gets development and it grows, so are the external needs and the needs of the society. So one has to be flexible enough to understand that what are the current needs and how things have to be managed accordingly. Along with that, no matter how big a tree grows, it has to stay connected with its roots. So my understanding after listening your info is, your introduction is that we must focus on the first 5 to 7 years of life of our children according to the basic principles of parenting, which are derived from the modern psychology and also from Uswa of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and divine knowledge. Now, this, as you have mentioned, this divine knowledge has got such a versatile potential that if you grow a mind in such a way that it becomes a corrective, a characterful mind, a mind which has got the basic understanding that Allah is my creator, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's way of life is the best way of life, and whatever we do here in this world, we will be answerable in the akhirah, which are actually the three main pillars of our understanding and our belief system. If we trained our people on these bases, then no matter what is happening outside, they will remain flexible, they will remain characterful. On one side, they will be utilizing all the modernity, and on other side, they will be just doing it with full of character. So I think the most important thing in society is to develop a mechanism of a training. And my work mainly has been for the last many years is to teach the parents the principles of parenting. And these principles of parenting are basically universal. Those things which modern science and modern cognitive psychology has taught us has already been revealed to us in the divine revelation and also in the life of Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So that is what I feel. And
Professor, in addition to this, from where you actually started answering our question, you spoke very rightfully as well that these times are different and we really need to be flexible. But in terms of when we use this very holistic term, flexible, what happens is that, that with modern liberalism, we do not certainly are able to put limits to our flexibility. And unfortunately, which is why we do see how the social structure of the society has started to change. How do you think that, going back to prophetic era, the first 7 years, or all of those characteristics that we need to instill in our personality as great parents, where do we set a boundary to flexibility or modern liberalism so that our society stays with the values of what Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam gave us?
yeah, right. Well, this liberalism is a word. I couldn't get a real clear, in my mind at least, I don't have a very crisp and clear definition of this word, liberalism. If liberalism means that one is open to all new ideas which are beneficial, all those ideas which are utilizable, and which generates a sense of creativity and a growth, then liberalism is not a bad word. And secondly, main important thing is that the divine knowledge through Wahi, through Quran and the life of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is actually basics, and they are the principles, right? If you have to derive from those principles, and if we think that we have to exactly duplicate what was there 1400 years back, probably that will require a little more understanding. The principles of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are such versatile and such flexible that even if you just start residing on moon or a Mars, they should be applicable over there. Now, how it will be possible? Of course, there was no computer at that time. There was no chat GPT at that time. So how we will relate to that? So basically, my understanding is that these principles are not exactly to be duplicated what was there 1400 years back, exactly the ditto copy of it. Rather, we have to live our life according to the modern needs on the principles which were
Well,
there. And those principles, let me complete, please.
sure,
And
sure.
those principles are principles of humanity. It is truthfulness, it is
Right.
honesty, it is dedicating, it is hard working. So these principles are the principles which are taught to us with that. But it is not a matter of exactly duplicating that society, because that will not be possible.
Right. Dr. Javed, I think we mentioned a very important point, and I think your stream of thought is exactly going that way, and that is that this unrestrained freedom project, right, like Shehzad mentioned, but the problem is that so many people are getting influenced by that. So, for example, let's take these feminist movement. I do have a problem with these feminist movement because now they're unable to even define, who a woman is. Any man who is feeling like a woman is also becomes a woman, right? When you don't put some divine limitations on that conception, this unrestrained freedom project goes out of the hand. And the problem is so many young people, even within the Pakistan, I see this diffusion of these ideas. They are getting influenced by that. Why do you feel as a Muslim we are unable to give a very strong counterculture to this movement, despite the fact that we have very wonderful anecdotes within our very rich literary tradition of Islam?
See, there was no time when there was no negativity in the society. If we think that this negativity and these type of notions and these type of movements are only here now in 2025, then we are mistaken. Always there is batil, always there is negativity in the society. Now, you cannot stop what is happening outside, but you can actually strengthen yourself. When there is rain outside, you want that rain to stop, but rain will not stop. It will follow its own course. What you need is, you need a very good raincoat, you need an umbrella, you need a long shoe so that you protect yourself. And those long shoes, those umbrella in this context is the proper training and teaching. When you say that we are lagging behind in our society as far as the prophetic belief is concerned, because we have not worked on it. When a baby is born in our house, we want to make him a doctor, we want to make him an engineer, and there's nothing wrong in it. But we never train our children towards iman. We never train our children towards the life of Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If I ask from you, and if I ask from our audience, that how many of us has at least once read Quran with its translation with complete understanding? I have tried it in thousands of audiences, and I have found that very few hands raised up. So there is no wonder that we are away from it, because we have never worked hard on it. When you work 13 years, when you work 13 years on one discipline, you become a doctor, you become an engineer. But when you don't spend any time, look at the talks, look at the topics which are discussed in our home. These topics are all rotating around money. See what we are talking in our talk shows. We are talking about the technology, we are talking about what Elon Musk is doing, what Donald Trump has ordered, what movie is going on, what drama is there, which heroine has married to which hero. So when we have these type of topics in our home, when we don't talk, we are making the heroes of our children those people who are worldly.
Do you feel social media can create a dent in this entire very dominant theory? Because you're mentioning that we are not talking in our homes. Perhaps social media can be utilized for that.
But there is no shortcut to the training of the first 5 years by the parents, because that is the time the psychology has shown us, and the human development philosophy has shown us that the foundation of our whole adult life is formed and framed during the first 4 5 years. This is why, I would like to just announce here that I have developed a course on parenting, which is available on my website after working 7 years on it. And the purpose and aim of that is that at the early budding and formating years of the life, all the family, especially the mothers, must know what are the correct principles of parenting. See, this social media is just a container. You can put abe zamzam in it, and you can put a haram thing on it. So, as such, social media is neither good nor bad. It is the utilization of the social media. So, obviously, all those people who think that they can contribute, they can use social media for a positive contribution as well.
Professor Saab, there's a very important question over here, and it obviously relates to the conversation that we are having. And I would want you to give me an example from your parenting course. Now, imagine that you said that the characteristics of our society needs to be truthfulness and honesty, and the list goes on. Now, imagine what happens is that in today's time, unfortunately, I am not sure. I mean, I know that it's going to be a generic statement, but we really do not have any trust on our political leadership. We do not really have any trust on our dukandar or a shopkeeper. If we go to hospitals, we do know doctors are actually going to just admit us for their sake or for the hospital's sakes. We go to journalists, we do see how they are lying blatantly on television as well. So in these times, it makes it difficult for me and Hajra to sit over here and make sense for people where there's a fight for TRPs, where there's a fight for ratings and who's getting more commercials and whatnot. So how do you think that parenting now needs to be so that we have our contentment to ourselves कि यार हम जो कर रहे हैं इसका अजर हमें अल्लाह ने ही देना है, दुनिया से हमें कुछ नहीं चाहिए.
No, no, it's not like from where these people have come. A person which is doing a bad journalism, a person who is a government official and is not performing his duty honestly, from where he has come? He has come from the laps of the mothers.
True.
And that 40 years back, their mothers didn't understand what are the basic principle of halal and haram. And this is why the concept of halal and haram is not clear in their mind. So that is what I'm emphasizing, that changing adults are very difficult. But we can start now, and all those children about whom I'm talking, after 25 years or 15 years, some of them will be, bureaucrats. Some of them will be a chief justice of an army, somebody chief justice in a Supreme Court. Someone will be a shopkeeper. Someone will be a clerk. Someone will be, and all those people, future of the Pakistan is now in the lapses of the mother. So this is the time to actually address. This is the place to address. This is the small loophole which has to be covered. So I know it will take 15 to 20 years, but there has been no system of training and teaching and parenting. This is why we are like this. And answer to it is going back to the principles of parenting. And when you said that whatever is there in the society is actually confusing us, and especially the young generation, that we don't have the role model. I would like to share you with you the first principle of parenting, and the first principles of parenting is children don't do what we ask them to do. They do what we do. And that is what we want to teach to the parents, that when you become a role model and you are a good role model, your children will automatically get that type of a training. When we say that a child has to be grown up as an honest person, it actually means that we have to train the parents to be honest, right? So this is why the answer to the problems in society, there you can impose a strong law, you can put a strict punishment, but that will just be like a paracetamol for a fever. But the original treatment of pneumonia is to create a generation starting from their day first when they open their eyes over here, and this cannot be possible without teaching the principles of parenting. To
Right.
many governments I have requested that these principles of parenting has to be included in our curriculum. It has to be included, and a girl which is passing out his graduate of a metric, when she does his matriculation or a O level, at that time she should be knowing the principles of parenting. A child which is after doing his FSC should know that when after few years I'll get married, how I'm going to groom my children. So that to me is
But
the answer.
I slightly disagree with you, Professor Saab, and I do feel that the grooming of the children starts when it is in the fetus phase inside the mother's stomach. But thank you so much, Professor Saab, for being here, for shedding light on such an important topic. And I do feel nowadays that, we as a parents have adopted a lot of, easier parenting techniques or easing parenting ways, and we're not focusing enough on the tarbiyah, and that is why we do see that there is lots of, I would say, problems that are emerging with raising the today's children or the teens out there. So with that, we are winding up our program. Until next time, it's a goodbye, Allah Hafiz, and Ramazan Mubarak.
Please make sure that you write to us at worldthismorning@ptv.com.pk. Until next time, look after yourselves. 1, 2, 3. Good morning. Have a great day. Ramazan Mubarak.
Ramazan Mubarak.